All right. All right, we're live. That was quick, man. Google just like bang, right? Live usually.
Yeah, I made an edict yesterday, and it came true. I said yesterday before the NFL games that I would guarantee that the Buffalo Bills would not lose yesterday, and they didn't because they were on the bye.
So here's my issue with the NFL. We talked just like a week ago or 2 weeks ago about possession in the NHL, talking about like when a player has possession, those kinds of things. So now in the NFL, we see yesterday with this call against Austin Seferian-Jenkins, a Jets tight end who has the ball, and maybe it jostles for a second. He hits the pylon. He goes out of bounds. The ball never goes loose. And you never see the ball on the ground. You never see the ball out of his hands. They call it a fumble, and they treat it like it's gone through the end zone kind of fumble, and they give it to the Patriots on the 20. And the crazy thing about the NFL is the last 2 years especially, the rule changes have become so severe that even the media are confused about the rules. And Kevin will even attest to this. Like the Lions got screwed out of a game this year, or at least a big-time play. Same thing. And it's maddening, and they're losing fans because of it. Like fans now are literally watching just their teams. I used to watch 4 or 5 different games a week, and now I'm down to just my team because at the end of the day, you don't know when your team is going to get screwed in one of these calls. And now even players are like, look, we're not going to use this as an excuse. We just have to win these things outright. And when a player says you have to win outright, that's like code for we don't trust the way things are going on the field, so we have to really make sure everything's perfect on our end. And that makes me a little angry.
Yeah. Well, what I would say about the rules is it's become even more critical because of the parity in both leagues. You know, there's a lot of sameness in the NHL and the NFL. So games are so tight that every little play matters. So in the old days, when there were more blowouts, you know, it didn't matter all that much, but it does now. And I would agree that the rule, the attempts to sort of screw down all the rules has sort of made it worse. Like,
Kev, when was the last time someone scored a touchdown who was actually in the end zone?
Yeah,
like, crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's
just like that guy's obviously scored a touchdown.
Well, it started with me, and I'm by far not a Dallas Cowboys fan, but the playoff game a few years ago when Dez Bryant made a catch that everybody thought it was a catch. It looked like it was a catch. The only people who didn't think it was a catch were Green Bay Packers fans, and then it was ruled not a catch, and obviously Dallas lost. It's getting to the point now where replay and where the decisions made by the umpires or the officials or the referees, they just stretch the bounds of reality, because sometimes you look at them, you see them, you say, oh, that's a catch, and then it's not, and it's like, and there's this whole criteria that they say, well, in the case of what Russ was talking about, the guy had his 2 feet in bounds. He had crossed the plane. He had possession of the ball. And the whole thing is the definition of possession. And it's like having lawyers determine whether it's a touchdown or not. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to be going through like bullet points of some legalese on Sunday afternoon at 3:00. I want to understand whether the guy scored a friggin' touchdown or not. And that's why I think the NFL is going down, because you've got injuries piling up like crazy. A guy like Aaron Rodgers is now probably out for the year. J.J. Watt, Beckham, the star players. The lack of durability or the brutalness of the game is contributing to that. And I think that parity, at some point, it gets to sort of be, I think it sort of is a turnoff, because honestly, it's like there's no team, even the New England Patriots who won the Super Bowl, are they that good of a team? No, they almost lost to the Jets, and the Jets were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. The Bills were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. They're both sort of mediocre. Everybody's mediocre. Nobody's great.
I do think you need a team to hate. It was a lot more fun when, there was teams that were so dominant that when you beat them, it was, it was a story,
Yes.
and, and their franchises, I think like in baseball, people still want to hate the Yankees, but it's not like it like it used to be. And in hockey, we don't have those dominant teams, like we've had in the past. Like when I was growing up, the Montreal Canadiens were always good, and you were always rooting against them. For a while, everybody rooted against the Flyers because of the way they played the game, and the New York Islanders. I'm not sure there was ever hatred for the Islanders, but
oh no, there was.
Yeah.
I was first in line.
And believe me, Kevin, there's still hatred amongst about 10 million people on the western coast of Lake Ontario for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But the point is that because there is so much parity that it's harder to project like who the good teams really are and all that. And I do think everybody does miss being able to root against a specific, top team. On the other hand, I think fans love the fact that their team has a shot. I think it's probably better that we have, parity in hockey. And in the NFL, maybe not so much, but certainly in the NHL, it's made a big difference for, teams that believe they have a shot to get all the way to the Stanley Cup final.
But, it's better. I'll say this. Parity is better than I saw like an NBA preview. I don't even know what station I was watching yesterday. And they literally highlighted 5 teams because that's really all that matters.
Well, didn't Michael Jordan, I think it was Michael Jordan said last week, he said the NBA has become like 4 or 5 great teams and 27 crap teams or something like that. And,
but that's circumstance, though. I don't think that was the rules. I think that's just
that's circumstance. That is.
Yeah, they just engineered the teams. Like they all got together and said, look, I'm going to play with you guys.
That has nothing to do with rules. That's true. Yeah.
It feels more like a neighborhood type teams, the way the NBA is set up, where like, I'm like, you're going to get the best players in the neighborhood to play on those certain teams. And they're going to, funny. I mean, millions of dollars at stake, and yet they're pulling it off. All right, well, let's start the show. We have, and this is, even though this is, I have something hockey related, but I'm going to leave it for the beginning of the show here. So let's do that. Ready?
Okay.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, October 16th, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time. And just a reminder to those who filed extensions, today's the last day to get your tax returns in.
If you haven't gotten it in by now, man,
that's how I know this thing. Anyway, this is it. That was my weekend. But anyway, it's done. I feel relieved. I'm happy. Everything's happy. Good. And before we start, so Kevin, we have a mutual friend named Steve who lives near me in Margate, and there's something I saw that I showed him, and I thought I had to show you too. I waited to show you on the podcast because I think this is the coolest thing ever, and I really think that he could get involved with something like this. But I also think I just love it. So check this out. So this is what a new thing on the internet of people designing their own jerseys based on Game of Thrones.
Oh boy,
I do like that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
There's
it's cool if I understood it. I don't understand it.
So here's one with like that has like the 3 different like the Lions, the Dire Wolves, and the Voltron.
Yeah, the Lannisters, the House of oh God. Yeah. Anyway, but yes, yeah, I can see the
Baratheon Lannisters.
Right, Baratheon Lannisters, right? Jon Snow.
No, number 23. Anyway,
the Starks.
That was the one I was like,
yeah, exactly.
I think that this is amazing. I love this kind of stuff. Hockey jerseys are just, wires of hockey jerseys are just the ones that are always meant to be, they're the best for designing stuff like this. Like
they are. That's the one thing that I think the general public has all sort of figured out over the years is that you could do anything with a hockey jersey and make it better because hockey jerseys were already great.
Yeah, there's something about. I mean, I know there's so much fabric and there's so much different areas for design, but like especially something like Game of Thrones, or I'm sure the Star Wars universe.
There's like a certain prestige in a hockey jersey that doesn't exist maybe in some other sports. I'm not sure.
There's a certain coolness to hockey jerseys. Yeah. I mean, remember, Russ, we've seen the pictures of like bands like Genesis in the 70s where Phil Collins or Mike Rutherford were wearing hockey jerseys on stage.
Terry Kath of Chicago used to wear jerseys. Yeah.
Roger Daltrey, I saw a picture of him wearing one. And then, then it stretched to like the hip hop generation. You saw guys like, Yeah, well, there's a few of them that were
Mike
wearing.
is a real good hip hop.
Yeah, I'm not big into hip hop, but I did see them, so I know that they did wear them. So
they're distinctive in in terms of how much play the logo gets.
Right, that's a good point. The logo is it's
prominent.
Right there.
So you mean when you're wearing your NHL jersey, wearing the colors, you really are wearing the colors. There's no doubt who you're rooting for. That's
No, you're
sure.
absolutely right. And I think that they really have. And any like movie franchise or television franchise that's heavy with symbols, like heavily symbol laden, like the Game of Thrones or Star Wars, is perfect for this kind of thing where you get a symbol that you've seen on the flags because the flags flying all the time, that kind of stuff.
right.
You put them on a jersey, it just looks awesome, like right away. It just like that's if I was still a member of a men's hockey team, I would definitely that would be my team in the league. Like I would come out and I would go and get those jerseys.
I got something I wanted to throw out just because I'm sure it's gotten a lot of play. We wrote about it, obviously, and that is, the Vegas Golden Knights have done everything, with great class. The way they handled the pregame ceremony, the way they've drafted and sold their team, making all the right decisions on how they've presented the team, even drafting the team. Like I would say everybody gives the Golden Knights an A+. They ended up with a guy who tweets, who was very clever, one of the best social media guys. They had it all. And then last night, the guy he's already had stories written about him. He's so clever with his tweets. He writes a tweet where he puts the starting lineup, the lineup of the Boston Bruins, and he uses 12 women's names as the Bruins top 12, and then you can imagine how that went over with all the females.
Great.
It was an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
And then he pointed out, and I'm a big movie guy, but I did not know the reference, that it was actually a reference to the movie Ted.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but and then he responded by doing the rest of his tweets with a Boston accent. Like,
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. And I just thought, like, how did they go from, doing absolutely everything right? And really, I mean, we're exalted for the way they've handled everything.
I think
mistress, Kevin.
Well, no, I actually think it's sort of the sensitivity on that kind of issue has changed in probably the last week and a half after everything that happened with Harvey Weinstein. Not to get into that, but I'm just saying.
Absolutely, that's the point. I mean, sexism is sexism. It would have been sexism a week and a half ago. But What's happened? Like, how in the world did this young man think that was going to be acceptable?
Yeah.
It was really, really unbelievable.
It's gone out of the days of politically incorrect humor. I really believe that. It's like
I don't think that's actually true. I mean, I watch a lot of comedians, and there is a place for it, but in social media, representing your team is not that place.
Right.
I watch CNN, and there seems to be a place for it. Yeah, I mean,
I go there.
No, but anyway, this is the thing about this that is really, I feel, obviously it's an idiot move, a dumb move. When you do something stupid, you just got to come out and say I did something stupid on the
Right.
You got to own up to it right away and be like, you know what, it's a dumb thing.
And then he should have just gotten back to regular hockey for a while.
Just trust me, it would have blown over a little bit, but the problem is that is something that you have to learn with experience. And a lot of people being hired by social media people, for social media at these teams are really young. And I've talked to a bunch of them. Like the Kings have a great social media guy too on Twitter, and
yeah, he's very good.
But he's also really young, and you can see that the inexperience of like, okay, and it makes you wonder, because on one hand, you're like, they grew up in this world, so they should understand the language of the internet more than others. But on the other hand, there's a certain level that goes beyond the language of the internet that you'll tap into if you hit into something that's happening in the mainstream. Because they'll be obnoxious to each other, in different ways, in ways that will look kind of weird to me sometimes. Like I'll read some of my daughter's text back and forth with their friends. I'm like, wow, you guys are saying that to each other?
Well, it's funny because I I spoke to a social media risk consultant last month, and one of the things that I gave credit to people who are younger is that they've grown up in the world of social media. So you'd think that they would be, they would know the pitfalls and the positives and the negatives. And in fact, it's the exact opposite. They don't realize, privacy and other things. They just live vicariously through their social media feed, and they don't realize that they are opening themselves up to offending other people by some things that they say. So it's sort of, it's lost on them in some respects.
Well, a lot of them simply don't care either.
Yeah, that too. And that too.
I just think, for me, a team social media account should mainly be, hey, this guy scored, this guy looks good, hey, we're better than you. And then once in a while, if you want to interject something, that's fine. But not everybody has to be a comedian on Twitter. That's really where
I don't know about that. I'm not going to
tell
you. I think that the Twitter is the place where you're going to have this. If this exists anywhere, I mean, teams put out their press releases and are serious about them, but this is the place where it can actually be fun.
Well, I mean, snarky and sarcastic is fine. I mean, I remember
every day, Mike, every day.
Yeah, I mean, in August, the Boston Red Sox, after they had beaten the Yankees, I think it was 2 or 3 games in a row, they used a Game of Thrones reference. They said bend the knee. Sending that to the Yankees Twitter feed. I think, okay, fine, they're being a little snarky, but if they would have gone further than that, then it would have been a problem, because then I think they're just being rude and they're being insensitive.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple days before, the guy for the and I wish I knew his name and I don't, but the Vegas Golden Knights put a tweet out. The Red Wings were in town, and they basically said that the Red Wings and Vegas Golden Knights are tied for the number of times they've been in the playoffs over the last year.
That's fine.
Yeah, and that was totally fine. Everybody got a laugh about it, and everybody went on. So I agree with Russ. I think a little bit of humor, a little poking fun. It's no different than when you go to an arena.
Right.
You show up on the video board of you going after the other team's mascot,
right.
Doing that kind of thing. I mean, it's just silliness. But, you've got to be mindful of things of this nature, which are clearly offensive. And especially, well, it doesn't matter. Sexism is sexism. But, in hockey, which there's a very large female population of NHL fans, it's even more ridiculous.
Here's the thing. Where do you draw the line? If I'm in charge of, a team's social media account, a Twitter account, let's say, who's going to stop me from doing everything in Klingon? Is that going to be the next thing, So all of a sudden the whole game, it's going to be in Klingon. You know what I mean? You have to have some limits.
Well, what will stop you is that's just not funny,
Well, you'll have to be cred among the few, but among most people, they'll just be totally confused.
Unless you've passed out 10,000 Klingon translators before the game, it's not funny.
See, there you go, Mike.
I mean, here's the thing where we live in. There's only a period of time, a short period. You can easily lose somebody and never get them back. The internet, and that's because there are so many places out there for them to go. If they leave your store, who's they ever going to return to your store? And because there's no reason to. I mean, there's so many options. When we were kids, if we hated something written in the hockey news, we had to friggin' deal with the hockey news still, because that was what we were. I couldn't go and find another hockey news out there.
Right.
The hockey digest. But that was, I think, whatever. Now there's so many options that if you don't like something, you can just unfollow them, block them, mute them, whatever. And it does sort of have its own way of coming to evenness. It does settle itself out. And why be.
What's true about Twitter, though, is the same that was true about journalism, in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. If you have to think about it, you shouldn't write it.
That's in the Hockey Buzz mission statement, Kevin. Honestly.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you have to wonder whether or not it's appropriate, then you probably should not write that.
Right.
I mean, the stuff about when you're just poking fun at a team, well, that's totally acceptable, and it can be quite funny depending on how you write it. That's acceptable in today's society, but something that's sexist or, that has, undertones of racism or any of that nature. I mean, you don't think about, does it cross the line? If you think about it, then don't write it.
I have a great story for that, and then we'll move on. But this is and I have a saying that everybody knows, will know the saying. except for you guys because I've never said it to you. But people around here, like, this is something my kids know very well. And that saying comes from when I was a kid, and the first time I visited one of my girlfriend's houses for Thanksgiving, and I sat down at the Thanksgiving Day table, and I knew her very well, but I'd only been dating for a couple months. I had never even met her family at all until sitting at a table with them for Thanksgiving dinner. And as I'm sitting there, I thought to myself, I was never more aware or conscious of what it is I was saying, because they're making impressions off of everything I do or move. They're all judging me more than I'm even judging them, because they know the girl I'm dating very well. And if I say something stupid, which I did, they'll get judged. I will get judged on that, and then you'll trying to get yourself out of that. You'll look even worse. And it's just, you're at a dining room table. So my theory is always, would you say this at the dining room table of someone's family you just met? Like when you're dating on Thanksgiving. If you wouldn't say it there, then you shouldn't write it.
That's fine. That's good.
It was just but let's talk a little bit more about the Knights for a second while we're there. So they're one of my topics for today too. This is an incredible story, and by the way, at the end I have the most famous. There's a little teaser at the end of the show. I'm going to show you the best celebrity hockey jersey ever. Okay, so celebrity wearing a hockey jersey ever. All right. So anyway, Nashville Knights. I will always call them the Nashville Knights because I went to see the Nashville Knights once when I was recording down there. The Golden Knights of Vegas. Last night's game was one of those games that made me think this team is more than we thought they were. It's like, now granted they bring in Tux, they bring in Shepachov, they bring in these guys who we've all been talking about, Mike, who you've been mad at, for them for not having them up. And they bring them in, and immediately they make an impact. They also bring in Malcolm Subban, play him against the team, which is awesome. First off, let's just throw that out there.
Move.
That's just a great move. Never, but it is a little bit extra, I want to say gutsy, to put Malcolm Subban in that game. For some reason, like when I first saw that, I'm like, geez, Subban's thing has been he's been put into situations where he wasn't going to succeed. Like
he's a competitive kid. Like he's a very competitive kid.
Yes,
and so that's where I think they know you have to know the guy.
Yeah, but they didn't
against Arizona, like in one of those games.
But they didn't have much of an option here. Because
Yeah.
What were they going to do? Start Maxime Legacy? I mean, they had no option. Fleury was put on LTIR, and they traded Calvin Pickard. They had to play Subban. Now it was good that he was playing against Boston, so you could get revved up to play against the team that he perceived didn't give him a fair shot. But they had no choice.
Like he was amazing. He looked great. He made great saves.
Right.
It could have gone better. You bring these two kids up, and they score right.
Here's the thing about the two kids. One last time, that was asset management. That was because they had to try and make moves. That we all knew these guys, and they're not kids. Shipachov's 30, right? But we all knew that these guys are talented and were going to have an impact, and they knew it too. It was just a victim of hockey business. That's all it was.
Right.
And it was, it was a philosophical debate, and I actually wrote about it, and I finished the column about 7 minutes before Shipachyov was brought up. I don't even know whether it even got posted before I wrote the column, but basically what it came down to is, all these guys they drafted, which all have some value, they felt if they put any of them through waivers, they would have lost them. So, in the long run, if they want to meet their objective, the owner has said that he wants to be, a highly functioning team. Those are my words, not his, in 3 years. So, which means they may not be an elite contender, but they're there. Well, they have to use all those assets. So, it was instant competitiveness versus, the long-term future of the franchise. And they decided that they would, they didn't think it was going to take very long in order to move it. And it took, maybe a little bit longer than they thought because they still haven't moved anybody.
Right.
But, everybody's tight against the cap.
I mean,
that's the issue.
They were only able to bring up Tuck and Shipachyov because they put Marchessault on long-term injury, and I think somebody else, I think it was maybe Hall got injured, but there was another. Yeah. So I mean that it was they had to wait for those things to happen to be able to do that. I mean, otherwise, really, and Kevin's right, it is asset management, but it was sort of a miscalculation on the part of McPhee because he thought he could move some of these guys out at the end of training camp for teams that needed to address areas of need. And he wasn't able to, or he didn't get the return that he thought he was going to. So they were stuck, and they had to send these guys who they had options on down to the AHL and hide them, basically. I don't even think Shipachev went to Chicago. He stayed in Vegas with his.
He did officially report.
Right.
So.
But see, I mean, but now, now everything's okay because they're playing and they scored in their first game. And to your point, Ak, I mean, yes, it is a success. Yes, it is. Right now, nobody expected this team to be doing as well as they have been. There's emotion there. There are veteran players there, but I still stick to what I think everybody said before the beginning of the season. I mean, you will see them in the latter half of the year trade off a lot of these guys. Oh, yeah. There's not a great depth of talent in this organization, and you're going to see them fall off. But right now, it's a great story, so nobody is ignoring that.
Well, let me bring this up though. Do you trade James Neal?
Yeah, I'm with you.
He's 30 years old. Your announced intention is to be highly functioning within 3 seasons. So that's 2 seasons after this. He'll still only be 33 then.
Right.
He is really your only premium scorer. I mean, they've got some nice players.
In that plan, you keep him.
Yeah. So now again, he may not want to. He may not want to.
He may not want to. It's true.
But he might. I mean, he's probably.
How they do. I mean, if they keep going like this, no one's going to want to leave. I mean, this is like a great situation right now. They're not. I mean, they're not going to keep this. And I know we all sit there and say that, but for how many weeks are we going to start on Monday saying, yeah, the Vegas Knights aren't going to continue this good? Like we're going to keep saying that every Monday, like we did this week, and
you depend on me, Ak.
I know, and you'll be there.
Well, the comparison might be this year's, and I know Russ and Mike are baseball fans. How about this year's Minnesota Twins? Everybody kept saying, well, they'll fall off. I mean, they lost 100 games last year. Well, they'll fall off. They'll fall off.
They're the first team to go from 100 losses to playoffs.
Hell, they traded their closer. They traded a starting pitcher at the deadline because they thought they weren't going to contend, and they still.
That's true. I think, you know what? I think Neal should get together with Fleury, and they'll figure that out. But if they really do believe in 3 years they'll be good, they should both stay.
Right. As good as they are against California, like that to me is the big thing for the Knights. Like they haven't really faced the California teams yet, and I know the Sharks are struggling. Right. But the reason I say that is because there are 2 kinds of that division is the most all over the place division as far as like a style goes in the NHL. I think that Pacific division, like who's playing what kind of style. You have everything from the Edmonton, like just all offense flying Oilers team to a Kings team that's playing like the Devils of the 90s. Like you have like everything that's completely and that everything in the middle there.
To an Arizona team that's playing like an expansion.
Right, so they're playing like an expansion team to Calgary, who might be one of the best teams in the NHL if they keep going like this. So it's all these teams are so very different.
Because it is early and teams haven't found their way. I think their strategy's working too. Like pucks to the net always sounds like that cliche, but right now when things are not fully figured out by teams, pucks to the net is the best way to go because you shoot on net, it hits off somebody like you never know.
And you can never underestimate the energy of youth, like that what they have, like that keeps going. Now that does tend to fade. You can't keep over 8 teams, like superstar. I mean, right now, the amount of goals being scored in the NHL is crazy, right? Like, so you throw that on top of it all. And that's the next number. That's my next topic I wanted to bring up. Are we seeing why are we seeing more goals being scored than even that? Because I did a thing about even
There's
going.
There's a lot more penalties. There's a lot more special.
And you can't use your stick to defend.
I actually think that the slashing thing is way bigger towards goal scoring. I mean, it's meant for injuries, but it's way bigger towards goal scoring because players are traveling through the ice. Not having to worry about getting hacked, are playing without fear and are skating way faster and they're moving way quicker through there.
And I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But we talked about this a little bit last week. I was at a game. It was Toronto and Chicago. 13 minor penalties in the game. 8 of them were slashing penalties.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no flow in these games, and I'm not saying that they're making up slashing calls, but it's
power plays.
But the act.
Have you checked it out? Like there's so many teams that are like 1 for 14.
There are. There's something else though here at play. And the other thing at play is there seems to be a lot more shorthanded goals than we're used to seeing too. And so it is, to me, it's a lot about special teams. And now –
because even more so, Kev, Russ, when you're right.
Yeah.
Russ, even more so when you're defending a penalty, the guy's taking you on one-on-one. and you're defending, you have to be super careful not to slash them because you don't want to. You're going to kill your power play, right?
Yeah.
So the refs are very into makeup calls right now.
Oh yeah, we saw the Flyers kill a power play on opening night. I mean, it's happening more and more.
Here's some stats I want to throw at you guys and see if any of this is real or it's just completely crazy. But these are kind of nuts. Okay, so last year we ended with only one player averaging over 1.2 points per game. And that was McDavid, right? McDavid had 1.22 points per game, got him to the 100-point mark, and all that stuff. And beyond that, we only had 5 players averaging over 1.1 points per game. So over 1.1 points per game, only 6 players altogether, right? Last year, at the end of the year, that's the end of the year. Currently, all right. So first of all, I mean, currently, obviously, scoring's early. Currently, there's 53 players averaging over 1.2 points per game. 53 players over 1.2 games.
What was that?
Yeah, but that's
like a race car.
That should be. You have to compare how many there were at this time last year. You can't make.
Yeah, I just said that, Kevin, because that's the next thing I'm going to do.
Okay.
Last year, so this year, 54 players, right? Last year, 9. 10 games into the season, 9. 10 days into the season. So 10 days into the season is what I did. Okay, so which is what we did because I did this on the 14th. So 10 days into the season, 9. And then and I go back the year before that, it was like 22. It was a little. Last year was particularly low. So I'm like, and then the year after that, 18. Now 54. All right, so 54. So that number is just crazy. I mean.
Yeah. I absolutely cannot stand the effect that it's had on the game. I mean, yes, the effect that it's had in regards to increasing offense. I mean, I think that the increased number of goals right now is in part because teams are not settling down defensively. It's the early season thing. I think that's part of it. But I also think that it's the ridiculous amount of power plays. And honestly, people paying good money to go to games do not go to see incessant 5-on-4s. It's boring. I mean, if your team scores, it's great.
Yeah, it's very boring. I know. I agree with you. I mean, it's incredibly boring, and that's power plays are they break the momentum of the game. They're like a specialty thing. It's like a different game altogether. The power play is like a half-court game versus a whole-court game. So it's like a completely messed up. But the numbers of when you sit there and you say, okay, is someone going to score 100 points this year? Right now, we definitely are going to get 100-point scorers. I mean, and because 1.2 is basically 100 points. That's basically what it comes out to. Because last year, McDavid had 100 points in 82 games and 1.2. So so there you have it. So that that's the way it play, or less than 100. I guess less than 82 games. But
yeah, but my argument is when you are artificially creating 100-point scores based on the way that they're calling the game, is that really beneficial? I don't think it is. It's like, you're overinflating offensive statistics based on oversensitivity of a particular penalty call, slashing. And I think it's going to settle back, and then we're going to settle into the 3-2 game, the 4-1 game. It happened with obstruction after the lockout. I don't think that there is a want for the league to continue this. I think they're trying to send a message, and they're hoping that, like the face-off situation in the preseason, that that players will stop, slashing.
Right, that's the hope, and that's the reason the number's still high, because it's not happening.
Right, and that's the thing, Russ. In a game now where you've almost eliminated body contact, where you've almost eliminated hitting, the only way that a defensive player can stop a player from going to the net sometimes is to whack them.
Well, and think about this, and I give Rich Bradley credit over in Philly because he does stats for the Flyers, and he pointed out to me at the end of the second period in the Flyers opening night that 8 guys had been chased from the faceoff circle already. 8.
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy.
That is as annoying in hockey as catchers going to the pitcher's mound in baseball. It's ridiculous. And okay, great. Try to curb slashing. Try to improve faceoffs. Not have like guys like Kyle Turris using their feet in the faceoff circle in the playoffs. I'm all for that. But at a certain point right now, and it's only 5 games, 6 games into the season, some of these games have been dreadful because of the calls that they're making, because of the way they're operating.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. I do, and I think that it's obviously incredibly boring to watch hockey, and it frustrates you to no end. But it is. But I think my whole point is it having a positive effect because of I want to see skilled players playing without fear. Like seeing skilled players playing without fear is really unfair to defensemen and goalies. But at the other side, you can sit there and say, well, it's not so unfair because before they've been it's been illegal the way you've maintained them. So.
Yeah, but skilled players have played in the league without fear before, and that was when you had enforcers.
Yeah,
that was when you had players who would provide that negative reinforcement if you touched a star player.
Hey, I was going to say I've got a mini subject that came up. I saw in the chat room for the
I needed you just so you wouldn't.
Yeah, and that's they pointed out that John Tavares only has 3 points and he's a -1 after 6 games. And when I had said that I felt like the arena situation was going to mix in with that team and could potentially be a problem, I mean, it clearly is. I mean, that's a lot of pressure right now on John Tavares to either sign or wait and see what happens with this arena deal and then to sign. And so, like, right now, sorry, that was a funny
stomach in there. We got for a second.
Right now, this is a lot of pressure on him, and it does look like it could affect the team.
I mean, I don't know, Kevin. Do you think it is affecting it? Do you think John Tavares is being affected by the outside arena stuff?
Well, I mean, I think it's the contract and it's everything. Like, I don't know that it's just the arena. I mean, I think it's more by the fact that his future is at stake here. And they always say that it doesn't matter, but it has to weigh heavily on you. I mean, anybody who's ever made a career decision knows how hard that can be, and it does weigh on you. You don't even like to think about it, So,
but the thing is, Zach, just as much of I'm sure that the pressure about the arena deal and things of that nature are affecting John Tavares, but the way that team was constructed over the summer, the moves that Garth Snow made, the fact that they are so dependent on a bunch of young forwards like Beauvillier and Hosang, they bring in Eberle. They really don't address their need for a big scoring winger to play with Tavares. They really didn't resolve the goaltending situation. So all those things on top of the fact that the arena deal is not etched in stone and Tavares' contract is up in the air. All of those are contributing factors. And I mean, you look at the Montreal situation. Great, they came into the season with Carey Price and you've got Shea Weber, but you made trades over the summer, you made moves, and you didn't improve the areas that you needed to improve. So when you come into the season and you can't score goals, then you have your answer because you didn't do what you needed to do over the summer, and that's what the Islanders did.
The Islanders have played pretty. Like Tavares hasn't been as good as he should be. They haven't played the greatest. They are 2 points out of a playoff spot.
Well, plus they're 0 for 20 on the power play. Had they connected on any power play goal, they might have a win or two more. Like, they haven't been horrible.
No, but we can only right, but we can only deal with what evidence we have right now through 5 or 6 games. And right now, the concerns that we had about the Islanders going into the season are reflected in their play. I mean, John Tavares is one of the most talented players in the NHL. He could very easily score 10 points next week, be the first star of the week, and everything. And you put all these concerns to the side. But right now, the arena situation is not resolved. The team, I think, is mediocre at best. The goaltending, I think, is an uncertain situation, and there are no answers. So right now, we have to deal with what's in front of us.
Yeah, but how is that different than? Let's look at the Detroit Red Wings, who didn't address their problems either.
Right.
And they're 4-1. So does
the Red Wings have definitely overcome it, but the Islanders have to sign Tavares, right? If they don't sign Tavares, let's just say it goes into July, Kevin, and they haven't signed him. It really doesn't matter how much cap space they have. You can't recapture a player like John Tavares.
Nope, I agree with that. And it's rare that a player does what Stamkos did, which is go back to his team after the season.
Right.
Usually, if you get that far, you're exploring your option. So.
Yeah.
But talking to people around Tavares and a little bit I've talked to him over the years, I think it's still the Islanders' game to lose. I think the Islanders have.
I agree with that, but it's putting pressure on him in season right now.
Right.
But does signing a big contract, does extending before the season, I mean, look at Eichel. Look at what's happening. I'm not saying the Eichel thing is
but he doesn't want to extend until he knows what's going on. That's clear. Yeah. That's what he said. When he said it's complicated, that's what he was talking about.
And Eichel's struggling after he signs for $10 million a year. I mean, give me $1 for every player that struggled after he signed a big contract. It's natural. I mean, he's a talented player, and he'll eventually kick it into gear. But right now, I mean, again, the problems with the Sabres are a lot more than Jack Eichel.
Can we really say a player is struggling 5 games into it?
Yeah,
no, not really.
Yeah,
we're going to, but you're right about that. I mean,
wait. I mean, Rick Nash has 1 goal in 6 games. That's struggling.
A guy historically, has done better. I mean,
that is struggling.
Definitely see that. I mean, if contracts weren't public record, would it change things?
No, because you still know that he's the best player, and you know that you could lose that player. That really does affect the team. I mean, we've seen it in other sports. We've seen it in baseball. We've seen, and especially in New York. Again, this is now a subject in the newspapers once or twice a week. The Islanders don't even get once or twice a week coverage normally, but now they're covering the game and they're covering this as an extra story every time something new comes out of it. That is a distraction. In a big city, it is. Now, if this was, a lesser team and maybe the Florida Panthers, it wouldn't be as big a story, but this is in New York.
I had one person say to me one time, Kevin, I thought this was really good, that the first $7 million, and this was a couple years back, so contracts. So I'll say this. It was around like the first 6 or 7. I can't remember. First $6 or $7 million is what you pay for the player, and then over that is what you pay for what he means somehow to the team. Like the last $4 million in Eichel's case, the Sabres have to go to their season ticket holders, and the season ticket holders know that they have Eichel for the next several years. But whether or not that's going to be good or bad.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's interesting about. Nash has 1 goal in 6 games, so he's struggling. Now, if he had 2 goals in 6 games, that's a 27-goal season. So if he'd gotten 1 more goal, then he isn't struggling.
How many?
If he's 2 and 6, then he's on pace.
Kevin, this is the way it is. Mitch Marner has 4 points in 5 games, but he's a -6. And today at Leafs practice, Mitch Marner was playing on the 4th line with Matt Martin and Dominic Moore. So.
Yeah.
In Mike Babcock's mind, he's not performing up to snuff, so they've moved him down, and that's what Mike Babcock does. He presses buttons, but it's only 5 games into the season. It's only 6 games into the season, but it doesn't stop.
Do you think that decision was based on how many points he has?
I think it was based on the fact that he was playing on a line that's probably the worst defensive line on the Maple Leafs, which is the JV Bozak line.
That would be my guess as well.
Yeah,
because how many times have you asked a coach about a player because he has 2 points in 5 games or 1 goal in 8 games or whatever, and the coach says to you,
"Yes,
I think he's playing fine. He's had a lot of chances." I think coaches see things a lot differently.
Yeah, they do.
Like advanced stats, like they were sort of into unique stats before we talked about advanced stats. They may not have been statistics, but they have their own evaluation of players based on how they see what they're doing. So
go ahead, Russ.
I was going to say, Mike, this Marner on the 4th line thing, big deal. Obviously, a lot of players go through it, especially young players. Right now, the Carolina Hurricanes are practicing. They've got little discs on the ice, and they're using the butt ends of their sticks. What'd they do to deserve that?
Nice. All right, bring back.
They haven't even played enough.
That's like a Freddie Shearer move there. Freddie Shearer, they had used to make the Broad Street Bullies play with the butt ends of it. It's fascinating. I love that. That's great. It is tough, and he's a young player, and everything that Babcock is doing has a reason. Like he might sit there and say he just wants him to go through the idea of being demoted to the 4th line. Just bring the concept of it in his head.
Speaking of Babcock, this is a story. I don't know. I'm sure Mike saw it because he sees everything about the Maple Leafs, but it was really kind of an interesting thing, and it really spoke to how there's so much disagreement about Mike Babcock. Pavel Datsyuk wished congratulations to Mike Babcock for his how many wins? 600? What was it?
600th win.
600th win. Pavel Datsyuk. You guys haven't talked about this, have you?
No.
Okay. He put out a tweet that said, "Congratulations, Mike, on your 600th win." And Mike Commodore, we all know, was very good on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Said basically, Pavel, you always, basically said, you're a great player, but you always did what you want with Mike Babcock. And he basically told him to pipe down, that everybody else hated Babcock.
Yeah. Commodore in his post career has accepted the role of being a troll on Twitter.
Oh yeah, he's very good at it.
And he's very good. He's very caustic and very good at that. But yeah, I mean,
it goes back to you haven't said about Toronto many times in the past. About Babcock and Detroit. You used to tell me, and I used to find it so fascinating that that if you were on the top two lines, you could do whatever you wanted, but on the bottom two lines, you were totally at his whim. That's.
Yeah, I mean that was true because of who he had on his top two lines. I don't think it's true in Toronto. I don't think that the top two lines in Toronto can do what they want. But
no, it's not the same because those guys are young, and I think I continue to think that Babcock is in a situation in Toronto where he's keeping them in check, and I think one of the things that what they're doing with Marner here, because they did this with Nylander last year when Nylander had a couple games where he checked out defensively, didn't fight through checks, didn't do this, didn't do that. He moved him to the fourth line. He did that 3 or 4 times. And then in the second half of the year, he sort of learned his lesson and he was playing every game with either Matthews or Kadri. I think this is probably a 1 or 2 game blip. Connor Brown is not a fourth line winger. They're moving him up. They're rewarding him for his play, and they're teaching a little bit of an object lesson to Marner, but eventually Marner will be back on that line. I'd be shocked if he isn't.
2 quick things I want to get to.
Yeah, but speaking to that thing about what Babcock did, I remember this, and it sort of speaks to, we think everything is so sophisticated, but at one point when he used to put Pavel Datsyuk and Zuckerberg together, the first time he did it, basically they came to him and said, well, who do you want to take the face-offs? He goes, I don't care. Whatever you guys want to do,
That's great.
Yeah, basically. So they decided amongst. They basically said, "You guys decide what you want to do." I mean,
well, Kevin, he's got Matthews and Nylander on the same line. Face-offs on the left side of the ice. He has the left-hand shot. Matthews taking the face-offs. Face-offs on the right side. Yeah. He's got Nylander taking the face-off. So
depends on who you are, and what you've, whether you've earned, Babcock's. Leaving you alone. But, Zetterberg, who was not Mike Babcock's biggest fan, had the trust to do what he wanted, and certainly Pavel did, no doubt about it. So.
I want to talk about one more thing, and I know we've talked about the Leafs a lot this year, and they are the big story, but I do want to mention the thing, and I wanted to get Kevin's opinion on it. I wrote about it today. Obviously we're all watching we're all watching all the Maple Leafs games now because they're interesting, they're fun, they're an exciting team to watch, right? So the idea of the fact that I think Matthews might be the greatest ever at one thing that he does. I talked to you guys about it before, but the more I watch this, the more I think to myself,
I got to get this guy. Sorry.
No problem.
Oh, geez, I lost.
I'll play the part of Kevin. Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys, we talk about this, but I'm still convinced, and I want to go in just the Toronto-Montreal game.
Yeah.
The concept, I mean, his game-winning goal was the perfect example of this. Like the greatest at receiving a pass that I've ever seen. And just throwing that out there. And it's a skill, like when you work on skills with players, you work on passing, but there is the opposite end of that, of receiving a pass, which is an enormously important thing to do, but no one ever talks about the great pass receivers in hockey.
Well, it's funny because I had heard over the summer, apparently Matthews had gone to a skills coach with the same skills coach that worked with Patrick Kane, or they were in the same skills coach together. I'm like, these guys are unbelievably skilled and they're still working on their skills. But I told this to Russ yesterday. You look at he scored 3 goals in that game. 1 was called off because of a batted in with a high stick. Every single one of them, he batted the puck out of midair. The first one, he intercepted Jordy Benn's clearing pass, knocked it out of midair, and then fired it past Price. The second one, he hit it out of midair twice.
I know, that was unbelievable. I know.
And then the game winner, he takes the saucer pass from Nylander. The puck is rolling, and then he times it perfectly as it settles down to fire it short side. I mean, his hand-eye coordination.
Out of midair by putting his stick on top of it.
Yeah, my
yes, he's like, the puck is a fast shot coming across in the air. He takes his stick and plants it on top of it, stopping the puck at full speed.
My brother played hockey, youth hockey, high school hockey. So he played for a long time, and he texted me after that goal, and he's like, he's got the sickest hands I've ever seen. His ability to corral the puck, to fire the puck, if it's bouncing, everything. It's incredible how he does it. So yeah, I mean, right now his skill level is phenomenal, and he's only getting better defensively. So he's rounding into a really great player.
It's ridiculous.
He is. I mean, look, I don't want to say he's the best at anything yet. He is great at receiving the puck. X right about that. That the one goal where he did bat it to himself, the feeble Montreal defense certainly helped him out in that.
Yes.
And then 3-on-3 does make it a lot easier for that last winning goal to happen. Because 5-on-5, I'm not sure that goal could happen against a good team. But 3-on-3, you've got all this extra room. That's why I think, unfortunately, Ek, and this is where we're talking about the scoring again, 3-on-3 has artificially inflated guys' goal totals too. Because there are some guys, I think at some point we're going to start breaking down goals on when are they scoring them. And if you're scoring a lot of goals 3-on-3, it's because you have this extra room on the ice.
Well, I mean, they're already doing that with goals and shootouts that they don't count for goal totals. So maybe I mean, not to say that it's not going to count.
No, it's going to count, but I think we are going to break it out as a separate category saying, hey, it's great that so-and-so has 40 goals, but he scored 20 of them 3-on-3. So what does that mean?
Right.
I had somebody say something really interesting the other day. They don't like the 3-on-3 anymore. They think it's gotten stale. And they said, and I love it. I love it. I think it's great. I have no problem with it at all. But he said what ask your podcast people this. I want to ask with you guys and I gave him my answer, but I want to hear yours. He said I want it to be 5-on-5 without offsides or icing. Like, wow.
No, that's just silly. I mean, guys would never be able to.
But I'm just throwing it out there.
It's going to be like street hockey when I was 12 years old with a guy goal hanging in front of me.
No, take away the offside and icing. 5-on-5, someone will score.
I'll say
with 3-on-3, it's not even the chess match anymore. Even for this is the second year we're in 3-on-3, right?
Third.
Is it the third now? Okay. So the problem is from the beginning of 3-on-3 to now, the game has picked up a lot in speed. Yes. By the time players get to 3-on-3, there's a lot of tired players on the ice.
Yes.
That is true.
And that was the thing that made the Matthews goal even more impressive was the fact that him and Nylander were on for the entire 48 seconds, and he tried to go to the bench twice and stayed out there and then scored the goal. But no, I mean,
you're seeing that, right? You're seeing players dying on 3-on-3.
Well, the other thing because now is that we've seen this in the first year. We're like, 3-on-3 is crazy in the beginning of the year. 3-on-3 is crazy in the beginning of the year. It just is. It wasn't like they start to because the points matter less to the players, so they're like going for it. Right. You see it. You sometimes will see 3-on-3s in March and April that are snooze fest.
But the thing is that and I've seen the Leafs play a couple 3-on-3s so far, and what Babcock has done is he's rotated 6 to 8 forwards, so 3 or 4 pairs and 3 defensemen going through. And the thing is, he's got the luxury to do that because the Leafs are so deep offensively. But other teams, they're putting out 4 forwards, and they're putting them out every 45 seconds or even less, and they're exhausted. So
the hardest thing about 3-on-3 is getting a line change. Honestly, people all the time, like when you can change, because you have to change at perfect times, and if you don't change, you'll be exhausted because you've been out there too long.
Well, they're changing now when they're possessing the puck. That's we've seen the trend over I think the last half of last year going forward, where the player is holding on the puck in the zone and he'll go out of the zone just to keep possession so his teammates can change.
Yep, and that's when it gets a little bit boring. I
will tell you this: I think it may have been the Ranger game. I can't remember what game I was watching. All of a sudden, there are guys now who were anticipating that backward pass, and some of these young players had really started to do it like robots, and the other team's forwards who are really good and can snip out of play are getting scoring chances now because they're intercepting those passes.
I hate the backward pass. I talked about that, but oh my gosh, the Predators are horrible at it. Watching the Preds this year, they have gotten killed on this insistence on power plays to make the backward pass.
Yeah.
To the point where players are just waiting. They're just waiting for it.
Oh, yeah. They're waiting for it, and they're going for it on the other end to get a shorthanded chance. They are.
And I think teams that are not good in shootouts, and I know Toronto was bad in the shootout last year, they're going for it even more in overtime.
Yeah.
Because they have a point to lose or a point to gain, and I think they think that they're better off trying to score in a 3-on-3 because they had literally no success last year in the shootout. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah. So I talked about Athesonio, Athesonio, I can never say.
Athesonio, yeah. It's a tough one, I know.
It's a tough one, with when you got 2 kids and you're getting no sleep. So anyway, so I'll let you guys pronounce his name. We'll call him Athy. So Athy is basically, at this point in kind of between a rock and a hard place, because like what's happened now is the Russian team that offered him to sign him to a pretty big deal has pulled out because they couldn't wait any longer, in their minds. And the Swiss League offers its own much lower salaries plus a much harder deal trying to get out mid-season should he sign with the NHL team. So he's in the Swiss League. He's there for the year, and I think he wanted to sign the Russian League and get out at some point, maybe after the Olympics or something like that. But at the latest, of course, that's the latest you can get out. But so now the Red Wings are playing well. So this has put him into a really weird spot. The idea in his ideal world, they would be like the Montreal Canadiens right now, not able to score goals, and we go out and we really need to sign you because the Red Wings are playing fine. He doesn't have his options anymore, so he's kind of overplayed his hand a little bit at this point.
Well, he's got time because December the 1st is the deadline.
Right.
So I mean,
and I think that. And then Red Wings are an interesting spot. They're saying now they'd rather, and this is the funniest thing. I love this comment. I wanted to get Kevin on this issue. Sorry I missed it, but because Ken Holland's brilliant. But I love the comment that's saying that we're willing to let him sit out the year versus giving him away for less than we want, right? Because they can, because he's just fine, no problem. We have it for teams playing well, and that comment always means the same thing to me. And this is something from 12 years of rumor chasing that I've seen that so many times. And whenever I've seen that, a deal gets done within like a week. It's like you can almost or a trade. Yeah, a trade. Yeah, right. Because it is the one, and often it's the trade like that, and more than often than not it's a trade because when he's saying, well, we're not going to trade him, that's when they trade him because when you say that publicly, first of all, it's kind of like a lousy thing to say because your other players on the team are like,
players ignore that. It's really, you know what that is. When a GM comes out and says that, that's a dog whistle to the other GMs. You better.
It always means that they have a deal that's close.
Put up your best offer now because we're going.
They've got a couple deals that are close to making this happen, which I think
that's all that is. That the player never pays attention to that ever.
You say that, but they do. I mean, the agent will tell them not to as well, but of course they do. And the players on the team who are already playing pay attention to it as well. That's the other thing that you have to deal with because other players are like, that's a lousy thing to do. Like to let a guy sit out a year, you can just trade him. So you hear that kind of stuff.
You hear that, but sometimes they can't trade him. Like they try, and they're going to get ripped off so badly. Like, hey, at the end of the day,
right?
If it comes down to that, then it's up to the player to just come back and eat a cheaper contract for a 1-year deal. And I'm sure the team would do that. Like that's really, that's
no, not in this case. Apparently,
you don't think they'll take that ever?
No, apparently the whole crux of this situation is the fact that Detroit wants to get him locked up for multiple years at a low amount.
They realize that is never going to happen.
Yeah, but that's pushing. That's all that is pushing a bad situation down the road another year.
Well, but a lot of times when you get that player coming back just on that 1-year basis, then you can trade him because the rights are still there. The other team would have rights to him as well.
That is true. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it is kind of like, it really just kind of blows my mind whenever you hear this because it is so predictable. So I would bet anything that they've got a deal very close to the making, and I would bet anything that he's traded this week. And it'll happen sooner than later. And he, the next thing you will hear probably not with Holland because he's so good at closing this down. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's already talking to the team. Like if his agent's already talked to Montreal and said, "What are you willing to pay him?" That kind of thing. That's got to go on before the deal's made because teams are going to be nervous about a guy who's a holdout. But now they're also saying, I read somewhere that they want Athy to speak with to speak with their coach and to speak to kind of get him back on the same page and say, okay, we are going to play you more. We're going to give you more minutes because in part of this contract, like I said, I think he's saying like there's a price and then there's a price. The price that they're giving him is a lot of times because you better play me. And if they pay him $2.5 million a year, he figures they're going to play him. Right. They're going to give him ice time. So now they're trying to get Blashill and him together and to sit there and talk about that there's nothing that endears you more to a coaching staff for playing time than a holdout like this. I mean, that's like like for him, it's not. He's not coming in great terms. It's not like you're gonna say,
no, it's not going to help him the minute he gets there.
You're on the second line now. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to no way. So this situation has sort of reached a no man's land, I think, for the Red Wings. I really do. It's so many things happening at the same time now.
And this is not a normal situation where the coach of the Red Wings doesn't know this player. He's been in the minors, and it just has a scant relationship with him. Blashill was his coach in Grand Rapids, so they've known each other and they've had a relationship for 4 years. So I mean, him not being there, I mean, it's causing a detrimental effect to him because he's not on the ice. But it's also, and right now the Wings are 4-1, so they're doing fine. They're in that position of strength, but it's just not a good situation. It needs to be resolved quickly, and so far nobody's ready to do that.
Yeah. So finally today, some cool numbers before I reveal to you the greatest the latest celebrity ever to wear a hockey jersey publicly. Okay. So, so here we go. This stat is fascinating and really impressive. Because the Jennings Award, which goes to the team that gives up the least amount of goals. If you were to do that for the Eastern Conference right now, who would win it?
Ottawa Senators.
Ottawa Senators, right? Who've done this without Erik Karlsson, who is coming back tomorrow night. Karlsson returns tomorrow night in the lineup. They just announced in the last couple hours.
This is a function of like when Craig Anderson gets hot, he gets hot, man.
I mean, yes, what a thing to go 3-0-2 without Erik Karlsson to start the year. Like everybody talks,
which means that in Erik Karlsson's first game back, they will lose in regulation.
Right. I mean, you're probably right. We all sat here and said, we had a hard time putting Ottawa up high because we didn't know how they would do it and how they performed until Erik Karlsson came back with a big thing. So here they are. They performed very well. I mean, there's only 2 teams that haven't lost in regulation yet in the NHL, and they're one of them. They're in a wild card spot right now, which tells you how weird everything.
That is weird.
Because they're barely in a wild.
That does show you the meaningless of the overtime loss.
Yeah.
Because you get the point. Like I hate the point.
I hate the point too. I hate it. You should never be given something for losing ever.
Right.
Especially Ottawa.
I mean, but look at Detroit. Detroit's playing really well, and they're in 3rd place in the Atlantic.
I know.
Like they're. I mean, granted, it's tied. They're all three. All the teams are 4-1, but so 2 of those teams play tonight, and the one game tonight, which is a good one, Tampa and Detroit. Tampa is a team that has trouble against Detroit. Tampa has always struggled against Detroit, so it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. This is a matchup that Detroit usually does very well in, although Tampa has looked phenomenal. And I'm
going Tampa on this one. I don't think Detroit stands much of a chance. I don't.
Yeah. And quietly, the other team I don't think people are talking about enough is the Blue Jackets, because they are actually
I think people are talking about them.
Yeah, they are, but they're 4-1. They've only given up 1 more goal than Ottawa, so they would be
when they beat the Rangers. Milano scored. There was a lot of talk about Milano. I talked about him on Long Island radio yesterday. I think they're getting their talking points in.
Yeah. I mean, and I think you're going to see a lot of great things out of them this year, and obviously that's true. But they just have gotten. But what's really happening is Panarin has absolutely been amazing.
Oh yeah, Panarin's like, to get him on that team. Look, Chicago loves Brandon Saad, but they didn't love losing Panarin. I mean, they just didn't. They just looked at things down the road and said, with our core players here, we can't afford them.
Right.
Yeah. And Saad's hot start is a big reason that the Hawks are winning.
That's early returns, right? Down the road, long term, Columbus killed them on this trade. But it's a victim of circumstance. Like there's nothing. Chicago, the way Chicago gets back on this, and we have Mark Kelly coming on our show for XM this week, is that keep drafting well. Keep drafting guys like Alex DeBrincat, and we have less and less to talk about because they got guys like John Hayden and those guys to move right in. Ryan Hartman,
Oh yeah, you're definitely right about that.
Yeah.
There is another thing. The final thing statistically that I found was interesting is in the Western Conference now. Okay, you've got, what do we have now in the Western Conference? 15 teams? No. Yeah, 15 teams, right? 15. There's 16 in the East, 15 in the West. Without looking, how many teams in the Western Conference out of 15 are a positive goal differential?
5.
6.
Nailed it. 5. 5 out of 15. So Calgary's 0.
That's twice I blew this up, man.
That's true. So Calgary's at 0, okay? But after Calgary, so there are 10, 6. So there's 9 teams. It's good math there by me. There's 9 teams in the West that are negative goal differentials right now. The two, including the 2 wildcard teams, that are in there, like which is Winnipeg and Nashville. So that's a bizarre one. That's a bizarre one. And in the East, it's a lot different. You have a lot more teams. I guess you have one positive. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But that's still, you have more teams that are negative goal differential in the.
Yeah. Well, it was certainly not the Rangers with the few goals they've scored. Tomorrow there'll be a big topic playing Pittsburgh. I mean, it's early, but that's an important game already.
Yeah, and Russ, you saw the home opener. I wasn't there. I had a family bat mitzvah to attend, but I will be there tomorrow night for the Flyers. Impressive 8-2 win.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Caps weren't dead.
Basically, I got a lot of people asking for Russ's opinion on the Flyers so far.
No, I mean, they've been really good. I mean, I think the difference right now that we're seeing in the Flyers, and it's really not Elliott. I think Elliott is just playing okay, and it's funny that he's playing this much because, like every night now, everybody's wondering when's Neuwirth getting in there, and clearly they're not taking out Elliott, right? So I think the difference has been, and I think this has been like a big misnomer, but we were talking about it on Twitter. Robert Hogg has seamlessly worked into the lineup here, and Sam Morin right now is not. And I think that surprised a lot of fans. But the thing about it is the best asset Robert Hogg has is not noticing him in a game. And he's really not been noticeable one way or the other. And that's a big deal because you would not notice him and then he would have like a big hiccup in the game and it would be a problem years back. Now there isn't. So that's a big deal. Patrick has helped. I mean, Patrick hasn't been huge, but I'm going to tell you the biggest thing. And this is for all the haters out there. Sean Couturier on the first line, now playing with first line talent, looks a hell of a lot better, doesn't he?
Oh, my gosh. The thing about him that is so good about Sean Couturier, it's always been the case, is that he never gives up on a play.
Right.
He never gives up on the puck, and he battles.
But people have been hating on him for a couple of years straight, but now this made a big difference.
But he's opened up a lot of space for Giroux.
And Valtteri Filppula has been tremendous, too.
Yes, Robert Hagg, there's a really good article on PhiladelphiaFlyers.com by our own Bill Meltzer right now. You can check that out. A Journey 4 Years in the Making about Robert. He's only 22, which is pretty.
He doesn't get talked about.
No, and he is a solid, and he's just another reason, more than anything else, like you say, he's invisible, which is hugely important for some defensemen, and he also gives them the depth that could help them do other things.
McDonald wishes he can be invisible, and he's been playing well, but fans still pick on him.
Yeah. What do you think about Manny McDonald being voted by the team as like one of the captains? I thought that was really interesting.
I have no problem with it. I think his play on the ice is better than the fan perception of him.
I think this is the player's way of saying that. I really do.
Yeah.
I think a little bit was an FU to the fans on that one.
Yeah, I do too. I think that too.
Yeah, they see how he's talked about, and although this is what I mean about contracts not being public. Like we didn't know what he was making. I think he's one of those players that you wouldn't have such an issue with. If you thought he was making 2.5, if he was making half what he's making, you'd be like, he's very sort of.
I mean, for I would say half of last year and all of this year, which isn't a lot, he's played well.
Yeah.
I have no problem with Andy McDonald whatsoever, but fans do.
Yeah. And what Hagg's brought to Ghost's game has really helped too.
Yes, that's been a big thing. Although Gostisbehere is still not scoring the way you'd want him to score.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's still a little bit hesitant from last year and afraid of making mistakes. Because right now you got so many defensemen, he's afraid of being up in the press box again. I think Gostisbehere, I think that's got to be a realistic thing for him right now.
I think you're right. Now there's a lot of things pushing him.
Yeah. We need to end the show.
Okay. I know. I appreciate it, Mike. That's Mike, always the party pooper. No, there's a real reason for that. All right. Guys, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow.